Hey, what's going on? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, April the 22nd, 2021, 12:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada, and The Conjuring, the devil made him do it. Made me do it, but talking about him, not me. Him, not me, him! Made him do it. AKA The Conjuring 3. Official trailer dropped today. Are you excited? Do you care? Do you give a shit? I saw the first Conjuring in the theater when it came out in 2013. I liked it. Thought it was great. One of my favorite horror movies of the last 20 years, to be honest with you. I thought it was great. There we go. The Conjuring 3. The Conjuring 3. The devil made me do it. All right. Now, before we jump into what I thought of the trailer, and of course, if you're watching, you can tell me what you thought of the trailer, of course. I'm a fan of James Wan. He didn't direct this new one. He's producing. I know that can, for those of you that may not know, a producer can mean something in movies and it can mean absolutely nothing in movies. But that being said, I like him as a director. Obviously, he rose to prominence with the first Saw, which came out in 2004. That started as a short film, by the way. And then he got the chance to do the feature, and he did the first Saw. He only did the first Saw. He didn't do any of the others, although he helped produce the other. And then, of course, he did, I believe it was Dead Silence, I think the name was, 2006 or 7, somewhere around there. And then he did a Kevin Bacon one. I forget the name of that one. Anyway. And then, of course, he did Insidious in 2010. Technically, it was 2011, but it was 2010 when and it was a whole other thing. And then, of course, The Conjuring in 2013. And I like James Wan as a horror director. I think what I like about his style is, and again, I know he didn't do part 3 here, but I'm just setting you up with my thoughts. I like him as a horror director because I think he seems to strike a nice balance between what the old and the new. He seems to strike a nice balance between what I like as somebody who's nearly 42 years old and who isn't into the whole modern day horror movies per se. I mean, a lot of the horror films that are, I'm not the demographic. It's not like I'm the demographic of Host, or Unfriended, or The Nun. I mean, I'm not really that, anyway. So I like horror movies that are more nuanced, slower burns, more psychological. But at the same time, I do understand the era we're living in. I do understand that to appeal to a general movie-going audience today, those kinds of movies, although may get critical acclaim, although may do very well with critics and with, people who, they're not necessarily going to be blockbusters. And I understand that. You need to suspend your disbelief. You need to entertain. You need to have some blah, 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 blah in there. I get it. I do. And I found that Insidious was a good example of a nice balance of that. You had your slow burn. You had a lot of the nuance and the subtleties of what I really like in a horror movie, where it's not every 5 seconds there's blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? You could repeat that over and over again on a video. But at the same time, you do have a little bit of that. There's payoff. Okay, there's payoff. And there's payoff in maybe in more extreme ways that I would go. So you take the first Conjuring, for example. Great slow burn. I really enjoyed that movie. I think it's one of the best horror movies of the last 20 years. I sincerely do. When we're talking about horror movies coming out of Hollywood at the studio level that are mainstream, there's a lot of foreign horror films that have also come out in the last 20 years that are more independent that are fucking amazing as well. Italian films, French films, fucking amazing. Japanese films. But when we're talking about the Hollywood studio system, The Conjuring was a nice balance. It was a slow burn for most of that film. You felt like you were in the same position as the characters. You felt like you were one of the family, there. And, great location. There was when it got to the end of the movie, although there were some creative decisions that I wouldn't have done in terms of, maybe a bit of the sensationalism, I didn't mind it at the end of the day because everything leading up to it, it felt earned, right? And I was like, okay, you know what? They gave me what I like. Now they can give the 17-year-olds what they like. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And I don't mean to sound condescending when I say that, to insinuate that there are no 17-year-olds out there that like, what I like as well. I'm not saying that. I'm just, hopefully you can read between the lines, understand what I'm saying. I understand the era we're in, and I understand that you got to have payoff. You got to show. I get that, right? But I like the balance that Wan brought to both of those movies, the first Insidious and The Conjuring 2. Insidious Chapter 2, it was okay. I mean, it definitely had Wan's fingerprints over it. The Conjuring 2, I did not enjoy as much as I did The Conjuring 1. There's a certain moments in The Conjuring 2 that I really liked. But overall, as a whole, I didn't like the movie as much as I liked The Conjuring 1. I found I liked more pockets of moments, more Wanisms, that he does very well in The Conjuring 2. I did not like it. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. It was a decent follow-up. I thought it was fun. But I didn't like it as much as I liked the first Conjuring. So now we have The Conjuring 3. And I know you have Annabelle and all that shit. But now we have The Conjuring 3, which of course is titled The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now these movies, of course, are based on quote-unquote true stories. Okay, now the reason why I put that in quote is that I'm not saying that the base and the root of the stories are not true. No, they are. I mean, if you look into it, you understand that Ed and Lorraine Warren were demonologists, were ghost hunters before that term, was even a thing. And they did go and do this. And each case in The Conjuring is a case that they worked on. The reason why I put true story in quotes is because there's no quantifiable, it all comes down to what you believe. And as I often say, you can believe in anything, but belief in something is not evidence of that something's existence. Quantifiable, objective, measurable evidence. You can believe in something and it can be true to you. That's fine, but that's subjective. We're talking about objective, quantifiable, measurable evidence that can also be reproduced. And when we talk about religion or God or the devil or ghosts or the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or aliens or, whatever the case is, I mean, there's different levels of evidence that pertains to different things, but obviously it can be a very tricky, thing. I'm not a religious person at all. I never have been. I didn't grow up in a religious family. I can tell you right now, I'll admit something to you. I've never been to a church service in my life, ever. Zilch, zero, nada. I've been to church. I've been to church for weddings and for funerals, but I've never been to a church service in my life, and I couldn't care less. Now, I don't say that as any disrespect to those of you that do go, that do believe. That's great. That's awesome. Awesome stuff, right? I think that's okay. That's fine. I just didn't grow up in a religious family. So on Sundays, we weren't going to church and Sunday school. We were just, I don't know, I probably had hockey practice. And you can also go to church and have hockey practice. I'm not saying, it's one or the other. I'm just saying I didn't come from a religious family. So I'm not a religious person. So do I believe in God? Well, define God, right? Do I believe in a guy with a long white beard sitting on a cloud going, "You suck, you are great"? No, I don't. I don't. Do I believe that there could be a universal intelligence to the universe? Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I do believe that there are, based on my experiences in my life, I do believe that there is enough, at the very least, circumstantial evidence to suggest that something, now what that something is, I don't know. And it's okay to say you don't know. Really, it is. I wish more people would say, I don't know. But I believe that there is enough circumstantial evidence to suggest that something survives the process of death. But what that is, I don't know. And that's, I'm talking about consciousness and awareness and all that kind of jazz. I find that shit really fascinating. Frank Riker says Dave dances with rattlesnakes. I might. But that's what it is, right? It's all about, I think there's and I'm not an atheist per se. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an atheist, but I do think that there is an argument to be made from atheists who say that their argument isn't that there is no God. Their argument is that there's no evidence, quantifiable, scientific, measurable evidence. it's they don't have to prove that there isn't a God. It's up to those who believe in God to prove that there is one, right? You know what I mean? And that's a whole other deep topic that we can talk about at another time. But we talk about this kind of stuff, and I set sort of the foundation there because these are, at their core, I don't want to say religious movies. They're not religious movies, but they're rooted in the belief in God and the devil. Whether you're watching The Conjuring 1 or 2 or 3, they're demonologists. I mean, that's what Ed and Lorraine Warren do. And there's a line in this trailer to The Conjuring 3. Well, before we jump into that, let me just say I've watched the trailer for The Conjuring 3. I wasn't overly excited about it. I think I might have been more excited if James Wan was returning because I really like his nuanced style. I like his horror sensibilities. As I was just saying, I think he's got a nice grasp on the balance between delivering what modern horror audiences, maybe younger horror audiences want, and at the same time delivering what older horror audiences like me want and appreciate. I think he's got a nice balance. Doesn't mean every movie he does is a home run. It's not, but I think he understands that concept, and he's great with suspense and mood and tension and building to something. So when I found out that he wasn't going to be doing The Conjuring 3, I thought, makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, he wants to move on from there. He's got other projects he's doing, and he doesn't want to be the Conjuring guy. You know what I mean? He wants to go off and do other things, but he's going to produce. Okay, he's going to produce. So what does that mean? Well, it could, like I said many times, for those of you that may not know, I mean, it could mean a lot. It could mean a whole lot of nothing. So I don't know how hands-on James Wan was in The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It, but nonetheless. So I wasn't overly excited for it. I probably couldn't have cared less whether they made another one. It's not like I was clamoring at more. And that's I don't say that because I don't like Ed and Lorraine Warren or their story. It's just, it is what it is. But we have a third one, and the third one is based on another true story. You can look this up. I was unfamiliar with this story. Of course, Tony Michael, who does Two Dudes with me here on the channel, he was very familiar with it because he grew up in Connecticut, where a lot of this stuff happened, where Ed and Lorraine Warren were based, I believe. So a lot of their stories happened in Connecticut, in the Northeast, and all that, like the Amityville Horror and the first Conjuring, and now the Conjuring 3. And so Tony's very up on that. He knows a lot about the backstory of not just Ed and Lorraine Warren, but of course this new film as well. I was unfamiliar with it. I knew who Ed and Lorraine Warren were, but I'm not as familiar and as robust with their information as, say, Tony is. So I had to look this up, and I read a bit about it, and of course it's based on another true story about this guy who basically, I believe he murdered his landlord. There's a whole thing around it. You can dive deep into it when you have some time, but the Cliff Notes version is he murdered his landlord, I believe. It's the first trial in American history, as far as I know, where the excuse that he was possessed and the devil made him do it, hence the title, was used as an argument. I mean, today, and I'm sure back then as well, but of course they try to, I'm sure, to steer away from that and plead insanity, and there's psychological issues. Science, psychology, psychiatry, obviously has come a long way since the late 70s, early 80s. And, saying the devil made me do it and blaming it on the devil, it's probably not the wisest thing to do in court in 2021. But over 40 years ago, they did it, and now it didn't work. He still went to prison, but fascinating that they actually did it. And there's a line in this trailer that I really like, and I like it for a number of reasons. But before I talk about that line, what did I think of the trailer overall? I think it looks good. It's difficult to say whether there's going to be those, I'm going to call them Wanisms, in the sense of that nice slow burn, some real genuine tension, some real sort of, you don't have to show us everything. You don't have to have a lot of, blah, we do see a little bit of the blah in the trailer. I get it. I understand. It's 2021. I understand. But there's a few moments in the trailer that I see where I'm like, I wonder how that's going to play out. because obviously we're seeing just clips. How is that going to play out, right? What's the suspense going to be? What's the lead up going to be? Because in a lot of cases, the problem with modern day horror movies is that it's all payoff, 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 payoff. And what they don't understand is that what's more important than the payoff is the lead up. It's the journey to it. You have to have cake with the icing. You have to. And I guess you don't have to. Hollywood's made a career out of it. But I just mean that it's really important that we understand, and for filmmakers out there to understand, that the payoff is important. Sure, I mean, you can get lost in, then we'll show this, then we'll have this makeup, and we'll do this, and we'll have this, and then we'll do this, and we'll have a command. That's great. It's not that that's not important. Okay, that's great. But I find that the lead up to that is often not as there's not as much of attention dedicated to the lead up. And the lead up is just as, if not more important than the payoff, because you need to hook your audience, you need to grab your audience and take them on a psychological journey of tension. And there's many different ways you can do that. But if you don't do that, the payoff is nothing. It falls flat, right? And we see a lot of horror movies that rely on jump scares or rely on payoff with very little setup, or just sort of, weak setup, or they're just so excited to show you this moment. So they kind of just run you through the setup at, breakneck speed, and it just very, very important. So watching this trailer, it looks like a Conjuring movie. It feels like a Conjuring movie. It's well put together. It's great to see Ed and Lorraine Warren back, of course, with Patrick Wilson and Via Farmiga, I think that's her name. Great to see them back. Obviously, there's an emotional attachment we as fans have to these characters now, so that's good. It's good that they're continuing to get them back. We know, of course, Patrick Wilson, I believe, is directing Insidious 5. I'm like, oh. All right. That doesn't really mean much just because he was the OG in the original too. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other show, but it's nice to see them back. That's a good connection for the audience. There's definitely some Exorcist moments in here. Certainly that shot of the car driving away and the guy with the hat and the briefcase next. I mean, you know, and there's no doubt it's intentional. 100% intentional. They didn't want to copy it exactly, and it's not going to be as iconic as the Exorcist one, but certainly, there's no way that nobody on set was like this. I guarantee you that's intentional. It's probably their nod, for sure. Their nod to that moment, but they've made it their own, which is nice. It's not like they have any glowing, windows seeping down onto his silhouette. But very cool. But again, very little context around. There's some scenes in there where I'm like, there could be some genuine suspense here. Like when she's in the forest and she's kneeling down and she's looking around. Now, the trailer itself goes quiet, but what you have to understand is that everything you see in the trailer in terms of sound design is generally done for the trailer. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the sound design you hear in the trailer is the exact sound design that's going to be in the movie. So in the trailer, when she kneels down in the woods and it's kind of quiet and she's looking around, I have no doubt there probably will be that moment. But the point I'm making is that how long is that going to be? Is there a moment there of genuine suspense before we see that, blah, and it's like, and I got to be honest, I hope there's not too much, blah, you know what I mean? Like in the first Conjuring, there's that great scene with that little girl, she's probably like 14 or whatever. But anyway, the two girls are upstairs in the bedroom, and you remember this scene, right? When she's freaking out and she's looking at the corner of the room, and we as an audience don't see anything. There's nothing there. It's just a dark corner of the room, and she's freaking out, and her sister's like, what is it? What do you see? And it's going to the dark room, or the dark corner, and then back to the girls in the dark corner, back to the girls. Like, there's something that I don't know. And I remember watching it in the theater going, oh, this is good. Because now it's getting in here. It's not showing us what she's seeing, right? We have to imagine it in our minds what she is looking at. And that is really, really, that's really effective. It's effective, right? So again, are there going to be moments like that in this movie? It doesn't mean you have to. If you have those moments, then the moments you do show things are payoff, right? For people that want to see something, or you want to, all hell to break loose and now things are exploding and beds are levitating and people are, okay, great. Now it's earned, right? It doesn't feel as like, we haven't been peppered with that stuff all throughout the movie, right? There's a payoff at the end. And I think it's important with modern day horror films that maybe that's the way they, especially these kind of movies, that's the way they decide to go. Like, I don't want to see people, levitating and freaking out in the first 5 minutes of the movie. I'm thinking I'm 5 minutes in. Where do you go from here? Like, if this is where you're going to start, you got nowhere to go. And then the movie just stays on this one line of the whole movie is just this, moments of that. And that's why modern day horror films can feel flat, because they peak too soon. You have to bring your audience on a journey. And the first Conjuring was very, very good at doing that. And the second Conjuring, for the most part, was pretty good at doing that too. So I'm very interested to see how this new director handles this material. It's difficult to say with the trailer with any sorts of, with any sort of real sort of conclusion, whether that is going to be like this. There's some really cool imagery in the trailer. There's some cool scenes. It definitely feels aesthetically, the cinematography, it feels like it's part of the Conjuring universe. 100%. The style, the feel, the tone feels very much like the Conjuring, which is great. That's good. We want that. I just want to know, how is the director, how is he going to handle these sequence of scares? And I that's what I think of when I watch it. I watch a trailer and I thought, this looks pretty good. This looks fun. I want to see this movie. I want to see it. I definitely want to see it. But how are they going to handle it? If I'm seeing everything in the first 30 minutes of this movie, where do you go from there? Then that means the finale better be fucking epic to be able, because where do you go, right? So that's one thing that I think about when I watch this stuff. Maybe it's not what you think about. Maybe you don't give a shit. Maybe just like Dave, you're overthinking it. But that's who I am. That's as a filmmaker, that's what I think about. As somebody who cares about this stuff, that's what I think about. I don't consider that nitpicking. I consider it having standards, and maybe they're stuffy standards to you, but that's what I think of. I look at that and I go, you know what, this looks really promising. And the trailer does make the film look promising. Are there things in the trailer that are, at the camera? Yes, we see that. But there's very little context around it. That's why I said, what's the journey like to that moment? What's the lead up to that moment? We don't really see that in the trailer, nor should you really, right? But what is it going to be like? What's the payoff? Am I going to be like, oh God, here's another fucking jump scare at the camera? Or am I going to be like, oh, that was good, because the journey was so effective. So that's really, really important. Now, the line that I love in this trailer that I really liked, actually, and I like it for a number of different reasons, is there's a number of different reasons I like it, because I've often, as somebody who is not a religious person, I've often thought this myself, especially in 2021. But I've thought it for a long time. The line is, I wrote it down. It's when Patrick Wilson says, the court accepts the existence of God every time a witness swears to tell the truth. That is true. I think it's about time they accept the existence of the devil. And I think that's kind of funny, because I don't know a lot about religion, okay, so excuse my ignorance, but the little I do know, I will say that I'm pretty sure that if you accept the existence of God, you are by default accepting the existence of the devil. So, it's now what that means beyond that is out of my realm of expertise per se. But I have always found it kind of fun. Now, as somebody who's not religious, which is why you see a lot of modern day courts today, you're not necessarily putting your hand on the Bible. You're just, you're putting your hand up and saying, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Yes. In a lot of cases today, I'm sure there's some courts that still do this, maybe in the Bible Belt, maybe. But you'll see a lot of courts today, not say, like they'll say, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? But then stop there and don't say, so help you God. Like sometimes they don't say that. It's more of a legal thing now in terms that you're in court legally. You do have to tell the truth. It has nothing to do with God. You've seen that sort of switch, which is really how it should be, but years and years and years and years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, whatever it was, that was used to, it was a very big thing, and that was used to like, you're swearing to God. You have him to answer to now. Yeah. It was a guilt trip is what it was. And especially if you were very religious, as a lot of people were way back then, it didn't matter where you were in the country, you were, there were far more religious people back then that bought into it, believed it, and that meant something. There were a lot more people 150 years ago saying their prayers before they went to bed than there are now. So it was very effective thing to have in a court 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. Today, not so much, right? Today, more and more people are less religious, or at least less practicing. There's more questions. There's more like, I don't know, there's more science base around certain things. And, we're evolving as a species, of course. If you are religious, I respect that 100%. This isn't a knock on it. If it helps you in your life, I think that's great. I think that's amazing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I didn't grow up that way. So I've always looked at it a little more objectively, maybe than the average person who might be a very religious individual. So I have always found that kind of funny. Like, well, if you can say, so help, like if you can swear on the Bible, or you're swearing to tell the truth to God in a court, why can't somebody use the devil as an excuse? I'm like, well, you're just admitting that that we believe God is real in this court. Well, then somebody comes in and uses like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, and I guess sort of the devil made me do it is the old version of, he or she is obviously not aware of their actions. They're insane. That's sort of where it would be now. But I like that line, and I like that line for a number of reasons, because it's kind of like, yeah, that's right. Like you can't, hello, just saying. So I find that kind of, and it's a great line for this movie too. It's the hook line. What I like to call the hook line, where that moment in a trailer where you're like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like, not all trailers have them, but sometimes there's a line in a trailer. Like, for example, if the Jaws trailer had, you're going to need a bigger boat. Like, that's a great line for a trailer, right? You're going to need a bigger boat. It's like, because it says so much without saying anything, right? You're going to need a bigger boat. How big is the fucking shark? How intense is the shark? They must be in real danger if he's saying, you're going to need a bigger boat, right? It makes the wheels turn. You start thinking, and they start thinking about shit, right? When you hear Patrick Wilson say, I think it's time that we accept that, the devil's real, it's like, oh shit, like, what does this mean? Like, what are the ramifications of this? Like, how bad was it? What does that mean to the justice system and where it's going to go and all that kind of stuff? So it's cool. I like that line a lot. So I like the trailer. I didn't love it. It's not like I was like, whoa! No, but very rarely does that happen to me. But I can say that I liked the trailer. I can say that it was better than I thought it was going to be. Let's just say that. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I was a little worried that it was going to be, it's very clear that it's very heavy on the visual effects. When you watch the first Conjuring film, it's not heavy on the visual effects. But again, I understand, with each movie, you have to get progressively, well, you don't have to, but they get progressively more and more heavy on the visuals. So, let's be honest. Statistically, are we going to like this as much as the first one? Nope. Is it going to be as good as the first one? Nope. No. Could it be better than 3? Yep. Or sorry, 2? Yep, it could be. There's a few examples in the horror genre where the third one is often better than the sequel. Could it be? Yep. But all horror movies are always behind the 8 ball. You are always leading in a direction. The more movies you make, the more sensational you have to be, right? Because you always have to be topping the one before it. so it seems. And that's what they've, this clearly looks, I mean, the first Conjuring, you know, it didn't get crazy in terms of its visual effect. Like, I think, and I stand to be corrected, but I think the first time there was a crazy visual effect. Now, I know when there's the wardrobe cabinet and the girl looks up and the devil or the demon is on top of the wardrobe, and then she jumps on the bed or she jumps down or something, but then it cuts away, which is great. But I think the first real, like, whoa, visual effect like that, to that degree in The Conjuring, was when that one girl gets her hair pulled and she gets tugged across the living room. And that's got to be like at least an hour into the movie. You know, everything up to that point, it's very nuanced, very subtle. Now, can you do that with every movie in a series? I don't know. I mean, I guess not. I guess you got to keep getting more sensational as you go along and getting more sensational early. That's my main concern is getting sensational early, getting too sensational too soon. Because as I said earlier in the show, journey is important. There's reasons why, folks, you like the first Conjuring. There's reasons why you're like, oh, first Insidious. There's reasons why you really love the first Halloween, you know, and not the others. It's not just that the mask is shitty. It's not just that the story is garbage. You know, a lot of it has to do with execution and pacing and taking you on what journey are they taking you on? You know, so when it gets to the scares, are the scares effective? You know what I mean? And whether a scare or a moment is effective or not is largely dependent not on the scare itself, but the lead up to it. You know, as I was saying earlier, it's really all about the lead up. You know, it's like a joke. The punchline of a joke is not funny in and of itself without a great setup. It's the setup that makes the joke fucking hilarious or fucking not hilarious, right? And if you start implementing too many punchlines of a joke without a proper setup, then, you know, it falls flat and it's weak and it doesn't mean anything. The same thing can be said for horror. And horror and comedy, as we know, are very tightly knit together, right? They're on opposite end of the spectrum, but they both have very similar fundamental principles and truths to them. And that's why horror and comedy are cousins to each other. So, you know, setup is incredibly important. And watching this trailer, I thought it was better than I thought it was. I'm intrigued. I want to see this, and looks very much like part of the Conjuring universe. But for me, it's too early to tell whether it's going to be a good movie or not. I have no idea. I hope that the new director and the filmmakers, I hope that there's some, it doesn't mean the whole movie's got to be like that, but I hope that, you know, there's some nice genuine suspense, some nice genuine tension and lead up to your scare. And it's not just one gigantic scare after the other without any setup. And that would be my concern. That would be what I hope they do. Because the first Conjuring, you know, the first Conjuring, same with Insidious, although Conjuring, between the Conjuring and Insidious, the Conjuring was more of the blockbuster, was more the mainstream, more of the one that sort of really embedded it into the pop culture consciousness. There's a style there, you know, and I don't want the Conjuring to just become another run-of-the-mill horror series that just, and it could go that way very easily. I don't care how much or how many times you have Patrick Wilson via Farmiga or whatever her name is in the movies. Eventually it's going to be like, this is dog shit, you know? So, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. I am. Let's put it this way. I'm a big fan of the first Insidious. I like Chapter 2, although I think I've only watched Chapter 2 once. Insidious 3, I actually wasn't bad. Wasn't great. Wasn't like 1. But Insidious Chapter 3 was also directed by Leigh Whannell, who is basically James Wan's right-hand man. I mean, they grew up together. He was in the first Insidious. He directed Upgrade, The Invisible Man, right? So he's got a real good horror sensibility about him too. And The Invisible Man, perfect example. The Invisible Man has great setup. Great setup. That opening, right? Think about that opening in The Invisible Man. Do you think that moment that her boyfriend came to the car and smashed, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, you're in no rush to see it, and smashed his fist through the side window? Do you think that would have been nearly as effective if we had seen them arguing earlier, if we had seen him speaking, if we had seen them having dinner and he was angry and he was calling her a bitch, and then she ran out of the house and she ran to the car, and then he shows up and smashes his hand through the car? Do you think it would have been nearly as effective? No. Because we've already seen him enraged. We've already seen him having a temper tantrum, calling her a bitch. And then he runs, and then she leaves because she's upset. She runs out to her friend's car. And then he runs out and smashes his fist through the... It would not have been nearly as effective. But why is that moment effective? Because of the suspense, because of the lead up. That whole opening to The Invisible Man is terrific. That's what I'm talking about. The journey and the lead up is often way more important than the end result. Not that the end result's not important, but you could have a subpar, and this is true, you could have a subpar end result, but an amazing lead up, and it'd still be pretty effective. You can't have no lead up and an amazing end result, because it just feels flat. It feels, again, like a joke without the punchline. You know what I mean? So anyway, Leigh Whannell directed Insidious Chapter 3, and I didn't mind Insidious Chapter 3. But when I watched the trailer for Insidious Chapter 4, I still haven't seen The Lost Key or whatever it's called. Still haven't seen it. I think Insidious is sort of, it's kind of, meh. I didn't get that watching this trailer. And I was worried about that. I was worried that I was going to watch this trailer and be like, I'm not really into it. And I didn't get that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. If you're watching after the fact, comment below and let me know your thoughts on the Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, the Conjuring 3 trailer. If you are just tuning in and now you'll have to, well, you can move me back and watch my thoughts, or you can watch after the fact, of course. But those are my thoughts. I'm excited to see it because my fingers are crossed that they are going to carry the DNA and style of the Conjuring films over. And I see moments in here where there are opportunities. There are moments in here, there are opportunities for them to do that. Now, whether they whether they do actually do it, who knows? I have no idea. And I also love this image as well. Now, this is not the official poster, I don't believe. This is just a promotional image, but I love this image. There we go. I love this image. I love that image. I think it's great. What I love about it, really, to be honest with you, is, of course, the crucifix on Lorraine's face. The light. It's almost like they're looking through the crack of a door, and it just so happens that the crack of the door is showing like this crucifix, on her face. I love that. That's amazing. The only thing I will say is that maybe from an artistic point of view, it's a little harsh. Like maybe nuance it a bit, be a little more subtle, as if it, like right now, it literally looks like somebody is holding up a light in the shape of a crucifix and shining it on her face. Really, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it looks like. And there's no light whatsoever really on, Ed. So it's very concentrated on her face. It's clear that there is a direct light source that is creating this shape on her face. I think it would have been more cool if maybe they had designed this in a way where you still see the crucifix light on her face. You still see it on her face, but maybe it's a little more subtle and there's a little more spill over onto Ed's face. So it really does look like it just so happens that whatever they're looking at or peeking peeking through or whatever the case is just so happens to be making this crucifix shape. And it's like, oh, do you see that? And maybe at first glance, you don't see it. And then when you look at it a little more closely, you're like, oh, shit. Look at that right there. There's a little bit of oh, that's creepy. That's really good. You know what I mean? And maybe they had that. Maybe that was one of their earlier drafts, maybe. That's entirely possible. And instead of going more subtle, they decided to go less subtle and just kind of go boom right on her face. Either way, it's a great image. I like this image too. It's not that I don't like it, but if I had one critique, that would be it, was to maybe make it a little more subtle and have some of that light spill over onto Ed. So it really does look like they are looking through something, or that the crack of something or something. And it doesn't look like there's somebody standing on the other side of the room with, a crucifix flashlight, essentially. Now, maybe, and again, I don't know if this is just a promotional image. It probably is just a promotional image, folks. It is my guess at this point in time, very unlikely that we will see this exact shot in the movie. This is just a great promotional image for the film. Now, if we do end up seeing this exact shot in the movie, which I highly doubt we will, so I'm so confident I'd actually put money on it, then the chat room's going to go, okay, how much you want to bet, McRae? How much you want to bet? $1 trillion. I think that it'll be, if it actually does appear, it'll be interesting to see what's causing the light source, but I don't think it will. But cool, very cool image. Very cool image nonetheless. I like that. So what did you guys think? What did you guys think of the trailer to The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me? Oh, geez, I was going to read you something as well. I had it all set up and I wanted to read you something. Oh, what is wrong with me? Here, I wanted to read you this. This is, 1 second here. Da, 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 da. 1 second. Oh, no. Da, 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 da. Oh, no. 1 sec. Where'd it go here? Thought I had it. 1 second. 1 second, folks. Hang on. Da, 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 da. 1 moment. I said. Oh, 1 sec. I've lost. Hang on. I'm looking for the page, and I've lost the page. Okay. I'm just going to read this to you because I think it's kind of cool. This is about the original guy. So let's go over, where'd you guys go? There you are. Let's go over here. This is fun. This is January 23rd, 1986, Brookfield, Connecticut. This is awesome. A man who claimed he killed his landlord while possessed by the devil has been released from state prison 1 month early after serving almost 5 years as a model prisoner, authorities said. Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, I think it's Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, 24, whose story was made into a television movie, married. Who are these women? Ladies! I will not, look, there's a term for it, but it's like, I mean, listen, that's taken bad boy to a whole new level, okay? You want to date the guy who, I don't know, throws his gum out the window? Okay. That's the benchmark, right? I'll never understand this. Anyway. That's right. He got married and received a high school degree in prison. He was released on parole Friday. The state's chief of parole said Johnson had been an exemplary inmate. Can you believe that? An exemplary inmate. Since his February 17th, 1981 arrest for fatally stabbing Alan Bono, could be Bono, 40 a day earlier. Incredible. Prosecutors said the two had been drinking and began arguing before the stabbing. Johnson served almost 5 years of a 10 to 20-year sentence, only 5 years, for his November 1981 conviction on a reduced charge of first-degree manslaughter. He was scheduled for parole on February 26, but was released early because of his good behavior, authorities said. Okay, early, 10 to 20 years, early, 4 years, I think that's really early. In pretrial hearings, Johnson claimed he had been possessed by demons after challenging the devil. after challenging the devil to leave a 12-year-old boy and enter him during an exorcism. He said he killed Bono. We'll just call him Bono, because Bo is B-O, so we'll call him that. While under the devil's spell, a Superior Court judge refused to allow Johnson's defense of innocent by demonic possession. Nevertheless, the case attracted widespread attention. A book was written, and a 1983 NBC television movie, The Demon Murder Case, starred Andy Griffith, Clarice Leachman, I've heard both ways, and Kevin Bacon. While in prison, could be Cloris too. While in prison, Johnson married, received a high school degree, earned several other educational certificates, and took a number of college courses, according to Hans Fjorman. I think that's Fjorman. Fjorman? Although there's no R. I'm probably butchering it, folks. I am probably butchering it. One sec. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where'd you go? There you are. I got you. Sorry, I have so many fucking tabs up here. I think it's Fjolman, Hans Fjolman. Chief of Parole for the State Corrections Department. He was an exemplary inmate, Fjolman said Wednesday. His mental condition was carefully examined. They found no negative factors. The chairman of the State Parole Board, Richard Reddington, said the board voted unanimously after a hearing in December to allow Johnson's early release. Yeah, why not? Fjolman said Johnson was released under a program in which he remains under state supervision until 1991. Fjolman and Johnson, a tree surgeon, before his arrest, a tree surgeon, love how they call him that, had been offered a job, but he would not say from whom, nor would he say where Johnson would live. Friends, however, said Johnson would live in Brookfield with the parents of Deborah Glatzel, I think, whom he married in January 1984 at the prison. Miss Glatzel's brother David was the child on whom the exorcism was performed. Keeping it in the fam, sort of, right? She worked at Bono's Brookfield Kennel. The Glatzel's telephone number is unlisted, and efforts to reach Johnson were unsuccessful. However, Ed and Lorraine Warren of Monroe, demonologists who worked on the case and attended the exorcism, said Wednesday that Johnson and his wife were very happy. Arnie's ready to work for a landscaper in town, and he's coming home to live in a very good family atmosphere, Lorraine Warren said. Both said Johnson shows no signs of being possessed. Quote, possession doesn't last 24 hours a day, Ed Warren said. It comes quickly and leaves quickly. Arnie understands what happened to him. He knows if something happens, how to ward it off, and he won't be stupid enough to take on the devil again. And that is the article from the American Press. Of course, this is where I'm reading it, from January 23rd, 1986. 1986. Again, I mean, if you are very religious and you believe, or maybe you're not very, but you do believe in God and you believe in the devil, then, these movies you'll be watching these movies through sort of maybe a different lens. You'll read about that story. You'll learn about the story of Arnie and look at it and see it and examine it through a different lens. I'm a very middle of the road kind of person. I always have been my whole life. I've said a couple times on this channel that I'm not left leaning. I'm not right leaning politically. I'm not a libertarian. I'm very more center. I like being center on a lot of things because because I don't get caught up into the emotional aspect, which a lot of people get caught up in. So, there's a lot of things politically I lean right on. There's a lot of things politically I lean left on. There's a lot, and I think it's a great place to be. And I see my friends and my extended family who will lean one way or the other completely and get caught up, as I'm sure some of your friends and family do, get caught up so emotionally in everything. And it's just, I don't have time. I think the best place to be in life really is the middle, because I don't think I don't think there's one truth to solve it all. I think most things are a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, most things. Now, I mean, there are obviously certain things that no matter if you're left or right or up or down or black or white or, whatever the case is, most of us can agree on a unanimous decision that, well, that is acceptable and that's not, and for a variety of different reasons. But, and I tend to be very much that way when it comes to this sort of thing as well. I am somebody that had a paranormal experience, if you will, in my second year of college. I've written a feature-length screenplay on it. It's something that I would love to get produced. It's not a horror film like The Conjuring. It's more of a horror drama, psychological kind of film. But I have had experiences in my life that allow me to believe that I've experienced enough circumstantial things in my life to believe that I think there's something more beyond death. But I don't claim to know what that is. I have no idea what that is. And like I said at the beginning of the show, having a belief in something is great. There's nothing wrong with that. If you believe in that, that's true to you, that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But having a belief in something, the belief in and of itself isn't objective evidence of that something's existence. Because I could believe that there's, a gigantic apple with a smiling face on the planet Mars. I believe it. It's true to me. Yeah, but that doesn't mean there is. You know what I mean? So I tend to be very balanced in my approach with this. And I'm also somebody that believes when it comes to supernatural and paranormal experiences that more often than not, there are reasonable explanations for unusual occurrences. And why? Because I've experienced it. There were many things that we did. I mean, we were doing ghost hunting before ghost hunting was even a thing. We're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. This is before Ghost Whisperer and Paranormal State and Ghost Adventures and all that. It wasn't a thing then. And we did a lot of research into the shit that we were experiencing and I'd say 8-9 times out of 10 discovered reasonable explanations for unusual occurrences. I'll tell you a quick one. I remember when we were over at the location of this place that we were investigating, and it was like 3:00 in the morning, and we heard this weird sound way off in the distance. We're young, we're 21, 22. It's very, this is early 2000s. It's very, this is 2000 actually. So 21 years ago, it's very easy to, you're already in that mind frame. You're in the dark. What's going on? You hear, in the distance. You're like, what the fuck is that? It's got to be an animal. I don't know. And you naturally want to, no, it's something supernatural. And it's like, well, I sound like the Macho Man. It's something supernatural. Anyway, but we did our due diligence and we investigated and we came to the conclusion, funny enough, that there was a little, unbeknownst to us, there was a little animal petting farm about maybe a mile or two down the road. And we went over there one day and we walked in and we're walking by and they had little goats and stuff. Nothing major. It's not like a zoo, just a little thing, right? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear not 4 feet from me, and I'm like, whoa, and I look over. Well, isn't it a fucking peacock? It was a peacock. Beautiful peacock. It was a peacock. Well, if we hadn't gone over there to investigate that, right? If none of us did that, and to this day, I'd be telling stories, and the people I was with would be telling stories about that time 20 years ago where there was this weird off in the distance, and they'd be telling it through the lens of that it was paranormal. And it actually wasn't. It was a fucking peacock in a cage around the corner. A mile down the road at some petting zoo that we had no idea existed. And it was doing it at like 3:00 in the morning. So that's just one example of I would like to think that I'm very level-headed that way, that I always take a center approach, but I'm extremely open-minded because of the things I did experience and experienced other people experiencing and have experienced in my life that has allowed me to be open-minded and go, well, there's something going on. I think there's something, but I don't ever look at it from a religious standpoint, because what you believe tends to be very focused depending on what you believe religiously, right? Like if you are Muslim, for example, they don't believe that when they die, they see Jesus. So, I mean, there's like, it can be very dependent on what you believe. That's why you can't, there's too many gods, in my opinion. There's too many gods, too many religions to be able to, and each religion says, no, their religion is the one. And it's kind of like, well, I mean, how do you, so that's why I do my best to try and remove religion out of it and try to look at it as objectively as I can. Like, let's try to remove religion and look at it, without that lens. And sometimes that can be hard for people. It can be very, very hard, especially depending on how you grew up and the things that you believe, and the things that you still believe, and I respect that. Like, I want people here to know that I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you practice. I couldn't care less. You are welcome here. I do believe in the Martin Luther King thing where, you judge a person by their character, not by the color of their skin. And I'll add, or the religion they believe, whatever the case is. I mean, I think character is incredibly important. It's really the only thing at the end of the day. So I want people to know that I couldn't care less. I'm not talking about it saying that you're wrong. I don't know. You may be right. You may be right. What you believe may be exactly what happens. It may be, but there's no evidence for it, objective evidence. And I don't know, right? I'm okay with saying I don't know. But yeah, it's fascinating. Like it's so I try to do my best to be that person that's sort of that's always down the middle and not get too, I mean, listen, I have my own biases. We all do. I have my own beliefs that I lean a little one way over the other. We all do, right? But I try to do my best not to get so caught in one way. I try to remember to be open-minded, that if somebody was to come forward and say to me, no, Dave, actually, this is how it is, and it's been proven and it's out there, and I'd be like, well, geez, there it is. Holy shit. Holy fucking shit. You know what I mean? So, and it takes a certain level of humility to do that, a certain level of maturity for a person to do that, because I think people get caught up in their ways and their ideologies, and whether it's politics, religion, whatever, they get caught up and it becomes very tribal and team oriented and us versus them and fuck you, and I'm just in the middle going, guys, both of you shut up, you know what I mean? But anyway, so but yeah, so that's how I feel about the trailer. Comment below, let me know your thoughts on it. I would love to know. Let's go over and see what you guys are saying on the channel. Let's see what you guys are saying. Let me go make sure. I think a super chat come in. One did come in from Mendel Goodman. Thank you, Mendel. Says original movies are usually better because it's a new idea. That's why there are people that like Halloween 4 better since they saw Halloween 4 first. That could very well be true too. Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. Nostalgia plays a nostalgia. Test. Low. That might be better. Nostalgia plays a big part in people's view of movies. There is no doubt about that. That is why there are a lot of people that love Halloween H2O and have an affection for that movie, because if you are of a certain age, that was the first Halloween movie that you probably saw, or the first Halloween movie you saw in the theater. I was very fortunate, and you know what? I probably would have been this. Well, I know I would have been the same way if I did not have older brothers and siblings. Okay, especially my brother Neil, who's 9 years older than me. If I didn't have older siblings, I probably would have been in the same boat as most of you who saw Halloween 4 first, or Halloween H2O, or whatever the case is. Maybe not H2O, because by the time H2O came out, I was already 19. So maybe not H2O, but one of the reasons why the first Halloween films I ever saw were the first two was because in 1984 and 5, when I was 5 and 6 years old, my brother Neil was already like 14 and 15. So he was, and it was his favorite horror movies. So he was showing me it, right? So I had an advantage in the sense that I had older siblings, not siblings my age, or not just a year or two older, but like significantly older than me. And I've often said, even though I was a young boy growing up through the 1980s, I remember the 80s very well. Like I remember the 80s how probably a teenager remembers the 80s. And that's primarily because I had teenager siblings that, like, you know, I remember dancing in the living room to the Footloose soundtrack on record. I remember fucking my friend Lisa across the street coming over and us playing. We would play. This is like 85. We would play. We had a tape recorder that we would record ourselves on, and we would play. We called it Michael Myers Operation. I got to have that tape somewhere. Michael Myers Operation. And it's me lying in my bed. It was supposed to be like a hospital stretcher. This is like 36 years ago. This is before Halloween 4 existed, folks. I'm lying in my bed, and Lisa was the nurse. And of course, we didn't have video cameras. It's not like we have a video camera. We couldn't film. We didn't have phones or anything, right? So we were recording it on a cassette tape. And you can hear her going, and we're here, and this is a patient, Michael Myers, and she's operating on me. And then, of course, naturally, I eventually wake up. And the cool thing was that I wasn't dressed in the jumpsuit. I didn't have a mask on. I was just lying there. We were using our imagination, right? Because the jumpsuit and the mask, you couldn't get that kind of shit back then. So I was just a kid. I was probably lying in my shorts and my t-shirt. That's probably what I was doing. But I was pretending to be Michael Myers, right? And in my mind, I was lying there in the jumpsuit with the mask on. And in Lisa's mind, I had the mask on and the jumpsuit. She would not have been playing that if it wasn't for me. I mean, let's be honest here. I was the one that was probably like, I want to play Michael Myers. Just play Michael Myers. So that's what we did. This goes to show you how long I've been a fan, folks. This has got to be like, I don't know, 85, 86, somewhere around there. But if it wasn't for my older siblings, I don't think I would have been doing that, you know, because I didn't have brothers or sisters that were my age. So, and do you think Lisa would have been like, hey, let's play Michael Myers? She wouldn't have done that. That's all me, man. That's totally all me. Lisa would have been more like, hey, let's play, I don't know, Care Bears or something. I have no idea. But it was totally off. But she was a good sport. She was a good sport. And it's cool. We follow each other on Instagram, and she was one of my first friends, you know, and she's married now with a kid, and but it's so cool to think that we've known each other for that long. She was fun. She was fun. She was funny. So where was I going with that? Fuck, there I go again. Anyway, I'm rambling. But yeah, I mean, oh, right. I know what you're saying, right? The emotional attachment, right? But you're right. There are a lot of people that would feel that way because of the nostalgia that they associate with. And it's not like I'm exempt from that. I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are movies that I've seen that are. I'm sure there are. 100%. You know what I mean? But yeah, thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Ryan Osh, now is it Olshow? Which horror movie made a big cultural impact on you and changed the way you saw horror movies forever? Psycho 1960, The Exorcist 73. That's a great question, Ryan. Changed the way I saw horror movies? I don't know. I can say this, though. I think for me, I started to appreciate, as I got older, I started to appreciate the more, because, you know, you guys know me as Mr. Mood and Atmosphere, right? Slow burn, nuance, you know, building, you know, suspense, all that kind of stuff. You know, I believe every great horror movie should have three ingredients at the very least, three important ingredients, which is mood, atmosphere, and suspense. I think for me, it might have been the late 90s or early 2000s. Maybe it was The Others from 2001. But it might have been before that. I have a feeling there might have been a movie in there before that. But maybe not. Because before that, there was the resurgence. I've always appreciated, I think I've always appreciated slow burn suspense, but I haven't always been old enough to intellectualize it and to verbalize it and to articulate it. But I think it was probably 2001's The Others. I love that movie. I adore that movie. There's The Sixth Sense from 1999, but I'm not a huge fan of The Sixth Sense. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a very good movie, but I don't know what it was. It's okay. I don't know. I like Signs better, but I hate the ending of Signs. I fucking hate the ending of Signs. But I respect The Sixth Sense and its pop culture footprint on the horror genre in the late 90s. I respect what it's done. I don't hate it. So I think for me, it was The Others. And I saw The Others for the first time in the movie theater with my mom at the time in 2001. Then I saw it again a couple of weeks later with Bruce. I really like that movie. And that movie is full of things I like, right? You know, nuance, suspense, mood, atmosphere, you know, slow burn, you know, not showing you too much. You know, I love that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, in 2001, I was 22. So I think I was finally at that age where I started to really appreciate this type of storytelling. And I remember when I watched it, I thought, man, I just love the feeling I had when I was watching it. I found it genuinely, like, it's not a scary movie. It's not scary, but I love the feeling that I was having watching it, right? You know, the darkness and the mood and, you know, like the mystery. I love mystery. And I've always loved mystery. Even going back to when I was a kid and my mom or my dad telling me I remember my dad telling me, and I loved this. This would be a great movie. I loved this. I remember my dad telling, and you're going to fucking love this. Get ready. You want to be creeped out? You want to be fucking creeped out? Listen to this, okay? So I remember my dad telling me a story when I was a kid. Now, I lived in Toronto here. By the time, I lived in, you know, the burbs, but I'll just say Toronto for, you know, so you know what I'm talking about. I lived in Toronto from the time I was 0 to the time I was 10. And then I moved to Ottawa. For those of you that don't know, Ottawa is Canada's capital. It's like your Washington. I moved from Toronto to Ottawa, which is only about a 4.5 hour drive east of Toronto, northeast of Toronto. And I moved in with my dad because I wasn't getting along with my stepdad at the time. So I moved in there. And I lived there for the next 10 years, the time I was 10 to the time I was 20, and then I went off to college. Well, when I was young, I would periodically go and visit my mom in Toronto and then go back and forth. And my dad would drive me back and forth to certain, you know, he would drive me to Toronto to visit my mom, and then sometimes he'd pick me up from Toronto and drive me back, or they'd meet halfway or whatever. Anyway, there's a highway that connects, there's a major highway, like a 2-lane highway called Highway 7. And most of it is rural. Like you go, it's beautiful. You're going through stuff like it, but it's a highway that can connect Ottawa and not Toronto, but you know, this area kind of thing. And it's easier than taking the freeway, because sometimes the freeway, you know, as I said, the 401 is the busiest highway in North America, and especially the part of, you know, Toronto, it can be crazy. And everyone's like, oh fuck, I don't want to go on the 401. So they take Highway 7. Anyway, long story short, my dad, we would talk. Obviously, I'd be in the car. I'm like, you know, 10, and we'd be talking and, you know, playing games or whatever. And I remember my dad told me a story. Maybe this was it. Maybe this is what got me into this kind of stuff. I love mystery. I remember my dad telling me a story years ago where he was driving, I think he was driving back from Toronto to Ottawa, and it was at nighttime. Now, when you're on Highway 7 at night, it is pitch black. There's no street lights. It is pitch black. You are in the middle of fucking nowhere. Okay? And it's pitch black. You just see the headlights. You only see the headlights of your car on the road. And I remember, I don't know if it was winter. It might have been winter. It may not have been. But I remember my dad was falling asleep at the wheel. And he said, I was so tired, which is not unprecedented for my dad. So he decided to pull the car over hop in the back seat and sleep for even half an hour, even 20 minutes, right? Anybody who knows who's really tired, right? Who's really, really, really tired. If you lie down and you get even just like a 20-minute power nap, you wake up, you're boom, you're ready to go, right? We've all experienced that, right? If you haven't, then trust me, it's amazing. So I think that's what my dad was doing. He wasn't planning on sleeping there until morning. He just wanted to kind of get a few Z's, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, then get back on the road and go, and he'd be fine. Well, he's lying in the back seat of his car. This would make a great movie. He's lying in the back seat of the car. He's in the middle of fucking nowhere. Okay, it's not like this highway there's a car going by every 5 minutes. No, like it wouldn't surprise me at that time if no cars went by. Okay. So now this is what he's telling me. He's in the back. Oh yes, it was definitely winter. It was definitely winter or it might've been because of him. No, I think it was winter. I think it was winter. Or there was a bit of snow because it was colder. So he's lying in the back seat. It's got to be like 2:30 in the morning. It's pitch black. He's lying there. All of a sudden, he hears at his window, bang, 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 bang. And he wakes up and he looks and he can see, but the window is fogged up. Now, the window is fogged up probably because it's cold, probably because anybody who knows if you've been in your car for any length of time and the engine is off and you're breathing, you will naturally fog up the window. So there's no doubt that was probably part of it as well. And he's looking and all he sees is like this silhouette sort of through the window and it's knocking on the window. And my dad was frozen. He probably was really cold too, but he was like, he didn't want to say anything because he didn't know who the fuck this is. And he just was there. And then he waited, and then he heard whoever it was walk off. He waited, and then he got up, he got into the driver's seat, started the car, and just took off. And I said to my dad, I said, do you know who that was? I mean, do you not know who it was? Like, he goes, Dave, there was nobody. He didn't hear a car start. He didn't hear a car drive by because one might assume that maybe a car came upon this car on the side of the road, right? And it was like, pulled his car over, wanted to make sure that everything's okay, knocked on the window, maybe to see if there was somebody in there. That's not unprecedented. But my dad said there was no car that went by afterwards. When he got in the front seat and took off, there was nobody around. And there's not like there's a house that around. Nobody. And I remember saying to my dad, I said, well, do you think that maybe you were having a dream and the bang, bang, bang just kind of was actually in your dream and it startled you awake and you thought, and he goes, well, it's always possible, right? It's always possible. But I love that kind of shit. Even from a young, I was probably 10, 11, 12, maybe at the most when he told me that. So I've always really loved mystery. And what do you get with mystery if it's told well? Suspense, slow burn, right? Putting yourself in the position of the characters. What's going on? This is so cool. What's happening? Oh, I love this mystery. I've always been that kind of person. So, and like I said, with mystery comes suspense usually and slow burn and it's more nuanced and you're building and you're building and you're building. So I've always really appreciated that. That might have been the first time that I became maybe even self-aware of my own interests and desires and in mysteries. And then of course, my dad used to tell me about this. He told me a UFO story and my mom would tell me certain things and other people. And I've always been locked into the mystery, the mystique of it all. And which, to no surprise, that's what I love about the original Halloween, right? The mystique, the mystery. I've always loved that. But there are reasons, there are psychological reasons why more often than not, those types of stories that revolve around mystery and mystique and get inside. There's reasons why they can be very effective. I'm not an anomaly here. I'm human. It's affecting me in the ways it affects most people when it's done really well or that a story is told really well. My dad was a great storyteller. My dad was a journalist. For those of you who don't know, he was a reporter. He was a columnist. He wrote for a living. So my dad telling a story is like, like you're on the edge of your seat with popcorn, you know what I mean? So it's great. It's great. Yeah. I've never forgot that. So anyway, long-winded answer there, but what else is fucking new, right? Super chat comes in from Andrew. Oh, and you know what? I did see, Darren, that you tried to share a link again and you got that moderator thing. I don't know what is going on here. So last night we had a Patreon live stream and Darren, one of our great moderators here, co-host of the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast. If you are not following the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast, wherever podcasts are downloaded, what the hell are you doing? They also have a YouTube page, the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast. You got to put movie podcast after it. Let's see if you can, because I think they're closing in on 100 subs. Anyway, shameless plug, I know. But yesterday, Darren tried to share a link. We were having a conversation, tried to share a link, and it was automatically deleted by something called the Google Moderator Team. I have never experienced this before. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it was deleted. I have no idea. And so maybe it's a new thing that Google doesn't allow people in the chat room to share links, but they allow the host to share links. Because when I shared a link in the live stream yesterday, the same link that Darren tried to share, and Frank as well, it shared fine, no problem, didn't delete it. So maybe there's this new level of security that YouTube and Google are, yes, because, anyway, I'm going to look into it and find out what the fuck the reason is, because people should be able to share links, and then it should be our discretion whether or not we want to click on it or whatever the case is. We don't need to be spoon-fed and coddled here. But of course, that's the way the world's going now. The world is spoon-feeding and coddling everybody like, we have the IQ of a turnip. Now, Frank has been deleting a few messages here. I see what you're saying. Quick before it vanishes. Great. I clicked on it. Oh, there it is. Oh, it was your movie podcast. That's right. Click before it vanishes. It's probably going to vanish again. Is it going to? It probably will. That's so sad. That's going to be really unfortunate if it does. What's going on here? Are we still live? Oh, it hasn't vanished. Well, that's weird. It hasn't vanished. The link hasn't vanished. I don't understand it. I don't pretend to understand it. I don't know. But it has not vanished yet. Strange. You're the 100th subscriber. Way to go, WJ Corsi. Yes, my man, WJ. My man, WJ became the 100th subscriber on the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast. You will not be disappointed, my man. Frank and Darren are great. Great chemistry, great insight. I'm going to be on their show again very soon, which is going to be a lot of fun. I love hanging with those guys. We always have a good time. So, yes. Yeah, Tom Hungarian says, Google Mod's been doing this, Dave. Yeah, and I don't know why. I don't know, because basically the issue is it's too arbitrary. And, I don't know if this is new and there's still kinks to work out, but Darren and Frank on the Patreon stream yesterday tried to share completely safe IMDb links to completely safe movies. Like it's just a link to it'd be like me sharing you a link to, Justice League or something. And it was deleted by the Google moderator team. Like that's bullshit. That's dog shit. That's unnecessary. I hate to sound melodramatic when I say this, but that's too powerful, man. You can't do that. You have to, if your code is written where where these algorithms just pick up anything or pick up or don't it's just bullshit. It's bullshit. I don't like how we're being treated as children. It's like, fuck off with that shit. But Darren's link to his podcast is still there. Oh, maybe because it's a link to YouTube. Maybe that's why. They don't get rid of their own YouTube shit. That's probably, I bet you that's why. Oh, Tom, you could say anything. On last night's stream, Frank shared a link to an article from Screen Rant, I think it was, to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Just a regular editorial. And Google Mods deleted it. Like, it's doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, I gotta watch what I say. Evil Alex says, check out The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. I've seen it, saw it in the theater. Has the same vibe like The Others. Very good horror film. I wouldn't go The Others far. I wouldn't go that far. I remember seeing The Woman in Black in the theater in 2011, I believe it was, or 2012. I thought it was fun. I didn't think it was bad, but I don't think it's on the same caliber as The Others. I think The Others personally, I think The Others is a modern classic, to be honest with you. The Woman in Black, not so much. I did not like The Woman in Black. I thought it was okay. But I wasn't, but you're right. In terms of haunted house, there are some nice moments of slow burn. There's definitely a vibe, a creepiness there, for sure. I get what you're saying, but me personally, I wouldn't go as far as The Others, but that's me. That is me. Let me see. Did I miss any super chats? I don't believe I did, but I just want to make sure I didn't. I don't think I did. Gary Wrangle. I did. Gary Wrangle sends in a $5 super chat and says, Dave, these Conjuring movies have been so entertaining because of how well Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga play the Warrens. They are terrific actors. They are. I would say that that's a big part of it for sure. Their chemistry is really good. What really makes this the reason why it works for them is because the writers have not just tapped into them as demonologists, they've tapped into their relationship as husband and wife. So they're not afraid to show the vulnerability that Ed and Lorraine Warren, these characters in these movies, have in terms of their love for each other. And, we see them in, I don't mean vulnerable positions in terms of what's happening with the devil and the shit that's going on. I mean, we see them vulnerable to each other, in terms of their relationship. And that makes them more relatable, and that makes them more attractive to an audience. And you get emotional. It makes them more well-developed. It makes them more three-dimensional, right? So that's important. And that's what they've done. And then, of course, you build that over the course of one movie, two movies, now three movies. Well, I guess they were in that Annabelle one or whatever it was. But certainly this is their series. It becomes more apparent that way. So definitely, I think that is a big part of it for sure. Yes, I would agree. I would agree on that for sure. Let me go back here. Just a few more minutes left in the show, ladies and gentlemen. Left in the show. Darren tried to share something again. Google Moderate. I'm gonna have to look at. Maybe there's something I can turn off. Probably not. But maybe there is. Maybe there's something I can turn off. I don't know. Robert Thidoff says, Dave, do you think we'll get a Jaws remake or sequel within the next 10 years? I'm gonna say no. No, I'm going to say no. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously. But I'm going to say no. Oliver Mercer says, hey, Dave, have you seen the YouTube guy Steve Huff? No, never heard of him. That researches interesting paranormal evidence by using his created spirit boxes. Steve Huff. Let me look this guy up quickly. Maybe I do. No, never heard of him, never seen him. The spirit boxes and the ghost boxes, folks, for the love of God, I'll use that. For the love of God, please. And I'm somebody that actually believes, I'm somebody that actually has had many EVP experiences that were not ghost boxes. This is way back, like I said, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we were using analog cassette tape recorders. I have a few EVPs that are not done by sitting in a room, turning to frequencies and listening to everything under the sun that fucking comes through. That could be paranormal. That could be the fucking radio station down the street. I mean, that's not really the right way to do it. So ghost boxes, I do not put any stock into. I think it's a flawed device when you understand frequencies and waves. And I mean, I just don't and it's painful to listen to people put down a ghost box and then they'll hear like, car, and they try to decipher what it's like. Oh, did you hear that? It's like, what the fuck is that? Back in the day, we had an analog cassette tape recorder, and we would walk through places that were supposedly haunted, and we would listen to the cassette tape recorder back at the end. And some of the shit that we picked up is incredible. And we're not using a ghost box. It's just a tape recorder. And the tape recorder is objective. It's not subjective. It's going to pick up whatever is in the room, right? And I'll let you hear some of the stuff sometime. I have one of the clearest, what I would consider EVPs I've ever heard in my life. And probably one of the clearest EVPs you will ever hear in your life as well. There's also context around it. And this wasn't picked up by a ghost box. This was an analog cassette tape recorder that I just had in my hand that was recording us walking through this place. And I'll let you hear it sometime. I just got to find it. I have it. I just got to find it. But yeah, the EVP stuff is I believe in the EVP stuff. Now, again, my belief isn't evidence of EVP's existence, but I do believe there's enough circumstantial evidence at the very least that there's something strange going on that is beyond radio waves, CB radios, walkie-talkies. There is something strange going on, but I don't think, because basically what a ghost box is it's a receiver, and it's picking up radio frequencies and other frequencies too, but it's like it's picking up anything under the sun. And I don't think it's the most reliable source. I think it's more reliable if you go old school, tried and true old school. Get yourself an analog cassette tape recorder, little handheld one, plop it in there, hit record, and walk around a haunted place, and then listen back. I think that's way more, holds more weight to me at the very least. Frank Riker, $5 for the sexy Google moderators. You are truly motherfuckers. Ain't that the truth? Oh my God. I got to look into this. I don't know what the situation is or why it's doing that, but I can certainly agree that it's very frustrating. 2 more minutes to go in the show, folks. 2 more minutes to go in the show. 2 more minutes to go in the show. Let me know your thoughts. And hey, if you're watching right now, as soon as this live stream is done, comment below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section of what you think of the Conjuring 3 trailer. The devil made me do it. What do you think of the Conjuring series? What do you think of the first Conjuring, the second Conjuring? What do you think? Are you excited about it? Are you not excited about it? Do you agree with a lot of the things I've been saying here on the show today? Let me know in the comment section below. I would love to know. Duke Fleed says, Dave, aren't you annoyed by the fact that a lot of modern horror movies end in a cliffhanger? I don't know. I mean, annoyed. I don't know if I'm annoyed. I guess I've become accustomed to it. But you understand why. I think I don't mind if stories end on cliffhangers, but I like cliffhangers that don't necessarily have to be followed up. Now, to the average horror fan, that's going to be blasphemous. No, I need to know everything. I need to know everything. I need to know what happened next. And I understand that. I get it. But it depends on the degree of the cliffhanger, right? If it's a cliffhanger that clearly needs a follow-up, that there's too many loose ends, there's too many things untied, you need a follow-up. Like, don't end it like that. You need a follow-up. That can get really fucking annoying, for sure. But they do that. They leave, they're told, even if the filmmakers and the writers don't want to do that, the studio will often say, no, you gotta leave it open, because if this thing makes bank, we want to make another one. The problem is that some cliffhangers are I like the ones that are left open, but they're left open for interpretation. And you yourself can fill in the blanks. I like those cliffhangers. I don't mind those. Sometimes they can feel abrupt and you can be like, oh no, what the, you know what I mean? But the more you, I've seen a couple of those, but the more you think about it, you're like, oh, but that's interesting. That I don't mind those. I like that. But yes, a lot of horror movies end on cliffhangers because horror movies are easy box office money. And they do that to leave it open for another one. That's what they do. That's what they do. So it's frustrating, but that's what they do. All right, folks, listen, that's going to do it for me for episode 164 of McRae Live. Thank you to my amazing moderators, Frank Riker, Tabitha Shore, Darren Sands, and Chris Baber for doing what you do. And fuck you to the Google moderators for unnecessarily deleting links that have absolutely unequivocally nothing wrong with them. You are dog shit. That's what you are, you little algorithm. Thank you to the super chats that came in today. You're amazing. Thank you to the non-super chats that came in today. You're amazing as well. I'll be back tomorrow, unless something happens, of course. Tomorrow, 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you tune in then. Folks, have a great rest of your Thursday, and have a great rest of your, a great rest of your Thursday, because I should be back tomorrow. Alrighty. And comment below and let me know your thoughts on The Conjuring 3.